leads or stuff like that, like hot leads or something.
Friends and family.
Okay,
That's your SOI, isn't it? SOI.
Oh, is it?
agent referral. Talk about that a lot.
We're utilizing that one, aren't you?
I am utilizing that one.
So is that, the one that you utilize there is from outside of this office? Is that, cause, or you?
I have some inside this
inside
office as well.
as well?
But typically, yeah, I'm scouting out agents from other KW offices that are having clients that have real estate needs here.
Cool.
Okay. Anything else on this list or something that you can come up with that sounds appealing to find? I don't want to talk about lead genning if you're not going to do that form of lead gen. So anything else that we have? Circle calls, yep. I'm gonna call it circle prospecting. Because it kind of comes into everything. Okay, so we've got 6 different ways to find listings, okay? Open house, SOI, door knocking, Facebook leads, agent referral, then circle prospecting. Any questions on what that is?
I don't know what circle is.
Okay, so circle prospecting
do it, I
is,
forgot.
well, you can circle prospect for a number of things, okay? If we had it just listed, you could circle prospect around that house.
Oh, okay.
Just sold.
Got
If you want to circle prospect around an open house, that's always a good one too, okay?
What's SOI stand for?
Spirit of influence, yep. And then I always count like my referrals to still be SOI, because now they're obviously lumped into my spirit. Okay, so, let's talk about this a little bit, something that I think, I like to kind of compare and contrast from buyer to seller. So I find buyers to be a very, very quick conversion. I find it to be, if I'm standing at an open house, they walk through and I say, hey, you know, you don't have an agent, you're obviously looking for a house, signed by a broker. It's a relatively simple process, okay? I find that if somebody walks through an open house, I don't really get to say, sign this exclusive right to sell right here and now, and then go home and start packing boxes, okay? That isn't very exciting, right? So your seller conversation tends to be a little bit more of a long-term nurture, and I think that buyer is a little bit more short-term, okay? To me, there's a lot more, sellers are gonna be very upfront, they're gonna be very, what's the word, front end loaded, all of that work is at the beginning. Buyers, I think most of the work is towards the end, okay? And I think that also is with emotions, I think there's more emotion for a seller at the beginning of the process, and for a buyer, it's towards the end, okay? So it definitely is 2 different processes, and I wanna go through a few of the stressors that sellers have, so you kind of start to navigate that conversation early as well. One thing that I can always just recommend is make sure that your sellers are ready to sell. You heard Sean Erickson say that at night. You've got to make sure that your sellers are in a place where they actually feel like they personally are ready to sell. Okay. So let's go through why do people move?
Job,
Upgrade, downgrade.
Okay, upgrade, downgrade,
job.
so relocation. Okay. Anything else?
Get old,
Getting old. Okay.
Want to be in a better school district.
Okay.
take their house.
Yep.
Too
Maybe you
much
can't
to-
afford their house.
Jump.
Okay, forbearance, foreclosure, right? Okay. If somebody's walking through an open house and they have a house to sell, why are they shopping?
They-
Probably to see what theirs might.
What the market
Okay.
is.
Okay,
To
if I'm
see
talking to somebody and I'm in Holiday and their house is in Taylorsville, and this house is 3,500 square feet, what can I assume they're doing?
Upgrade.
Upgrading, okay? If I am circle prospecting, what's the conversation I'm having with them?
Your neighbor is da 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 da.
Have you thought about making it,
Have you guys thought, yeah,
right?
come see.
So, and the important thing is if you're doing an open house and somebody's walking through, that's a buy sell, right? That's a completely different conversation than the person who is moving out of state, right? That process is different, the way you're gonna get the appointment's a little different, okay? And that's kind of, you really need to make sure that when you're lead generating for a seller, you've got to listen very, very closely to what it is that they're saying. And I think you do with buyers too, but with sellers, you really need to understand what that end goal is, whether they're gonna upgrade or downgrade. And you have somebody who's like, yeah, I bought my house 6 months ago and I want to upgrade. Okay, well, I hope you haven't pay increase, right? Like you can't really use that equity because you don't have enough to really get you into a different house, okay? Has anybody done any of these?
Yes.
I know we had open house in SOI. Who's been door knocking? Okay, who's done Facebook leads?
I'm on the verge of doing something.
Agent referral? Anybody done that? Okay. Circle prospect. Okay. Success rate, how do we feel about it? What did we not like about it? What do we love about it?
I'm still not sure how to work the agent referral, so not
Okay.
really doing very great there.
Okay, we can talk about that.
I like the door knocking. I would like, I think if I had a partner kind of thing
Okay,
to go with that.
I've done that.
I like circle that because you already have like, it's really easy. It's like, we have an open house, we're inviting the neighborhood, you know, this kind of stuff. And then you can kind of get into a conversation. So I like that one also.
Okay, I do love circle prospecting.
Yeah.
More than door knocking, because I do feel like circle prospecting, I already have a piece of information in my hand. Whether it's just sold, an open house, whatever that is, I feel like I already have some value before I knock on the door.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the goal of Facebook leads, door knocking, circle prospecting?
Get homes to sell.
Build a relationship.
Thank you. I always think that you have got to build a relationship here before you can score an appointment, okay? If I get an open house lead, an SOI, or an agent referral, I probably will go straight for the appointment, okay? Because that one's already insinuating a relationship, right? You know, hey, so-and-so, Stacy, your sister referred me to you saying that you may need to sell your house. What does that look like, okay? I already kind of have this reason to have a connection with someone, right? Where Facebook lead, I can't, it's hard to call and be like, hey, you clicked on my ad that says you're interested in selling your house, we want to meet on Tuesday at your property, and you don't know anything about me and I don't know anything about you, right?
How would you go with that one, the Facebook leads? What would be?
Facebook leads, I try to create more of a conversation and then leave it and then come back to it, okay? So like, I use more Facebook leads for advertising my listings. I don't really do it for attracting listings just because I haven't had a lot of success with it. But you know, if somebody calls and says, or I say, hey, you know, you were interested in this property, what has you thinking about buying? Oh, you know, I'm renting right now. Oh, cool. How long have you been renting? Where are you at? Right? And I go through that whole Ford model or LP model or whichever one you want to use. But then I leave the conversation. If it feels like I could score an appointment right then, I probably would. But a lot of the times you're not really, it's almost a two-step program. Like you've almost got to have that conversation. Hey, you know, reach out anytime you feel, and then we'll go from there, right? And then I kind of reach out a couple of days later. Hey, you know, from our conversation, what did you get out of that? What can I do to help you? And then once they have something for you to help them with, that's when you get the appointment, right?
Okay.
So I don't know. I mean, for me, it's a little bit more of that pre-qualifying
On a Facebook lead.
on a Facebook lead or even door knocking. I mean, yeah.
Even open
biggest thing
house,
is-
isn't open house, I'm sorry.
No, you're
Isn't
right.
open house even a pre-qualification, because or do you take even
I
if they
get
aren't
that.
pre-qualified?
I get enough conversation from an open house to pre-qualify
Okay,
most of the time.
okay.
So, yeah, if you're just one of those people that has a sign-in sheet and you're just calling 40 people on a Monday, I'm not scoring an appointment on Monday for me. For me, I'm waiting until I have a little bit more of a relationship. And the other reason for that is I think it saves my time. Because like I said, I'm also very picky with who I work with. And I want people who want to work with me. And so I'm kind of like developing that relationship to make sure that I trust them and that they trust me. Before I jump into the whole like, let's get in business together and let me sell your house. I just want to make sure that there's kind of a relationship there. That's my personal preference. If you want to cold call and set an appointment the same day, you totally can, right? I do think it works. That's just my kind of method. Okay. So yeah, for me, you know, door knocking, Facebook leads, circle prospecting, this is more to get contact info, to stay following up. I mean, especially when it comes to selling leads, guys, like I tell people all the time, I have exclusive right to sell in my office that we're signing back in March. Like, these are a longer nurture, and that's kind of why I say like, yeah, if I'm circle prospecting and somebody says, oh, I'm interested in selling my house. Interested does not mean I wanna sign paperwork tomorrow, right? If somebody's interested in buying a house, they don't really care, they'll sign paperwork tomorrow, whatever, right? Let's get going, I guess. Sellers are a little bit more like, oh, I need to fix my house, I need to pack, I need to find somewhere to go, right? So I do feel like they're more of that long-term nurture, and that's why I say, like, if you're gonna door knock a circle prospect for a seller, you know, be prepared to just really get contact info and keep that relationship going. If you do that, I think you'll see more success, because I do see a lot of people that are like, yeah, when door knocking, you didn't get a listing. Well, I'm not surprised, right? Nobody wants to sell their house same day. I don't think, okay? So let's talk about like let's talk about a little bit of the follow-up, and then we'll talk about getting the appointment. What do you guys use to follow up with sellers?
Phone call,
Okay,
email. Yeah, text sometimes. Depending on the person.
what does this automatically for us?
What does it say?
Smart plans. Right? Okay, I will use smart plans for a lead to listing appointment. Okay, I don't really use smart plans once I use smart plans for a buyer still once we're signing an agreement. I don't use smart plans for a seller once we have an agreement, just because some people are a month out, some people are 3 months out, so I don't like the time automation. But I will use it for follow-up. So open house, somebody comes in, yeah, I'm interested in selling my house, blah, 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 okay, cool. I'm using a smart plan to kind of consistently follow up with it for 2 weeks. And then, you know, trying to score an appointment sometime during that 2 weeks, right?
And how would you address somebody that could sell their house right now, but are thinking of saying, wait until April when it's better market? What would you say?
What makes it a better market? Right?
Good question.
Right, because
Well,
Why?
most people sell their houses, I mean, the summer's always better, right?
Well,
So
then
that's
you
what
have a
I'm saying.
larger inventory, so the likely, I mean, I think it's a
If- yeah.
great time now because
there's less competition during
less
the winter.
competition, yeah.
More people are maybe
Well, that's-
shopping
so
during
how
the
would-
summer.
How would you address that? Yeah.
So whenever somebody tries to tell me something about the market, I dive really deep into, okay, where did you come up with that,
Okay.
right? If somebody tells me, oh, I'm gonna wait till spring to buy. Oh, cool, you're a real estate professional, tell me why, right? Let me talk to them about why, because typically I'm gonna find that either their mom and dad think that they shouldn't buy a town, like buyers. I always have them, they're like, I don't wanna buy a town. Okay, tell me why. Well, because they don't appreciate them, right? My mom and dad said I should never buy one, they're hard to sell. Really, that's interesting because the stats show that they appreciate faster than single family homes, right? So every time that I have somebody that has kind of an, and I don't call it an objection, because it's not really an objection to selling or buying, it's more just like a question, I guess. I just kind of dive into, okay, where did you find that? What makes you believe that? And then, is it really that way, right? If somebody says, yeah, you know, I have an amazing yard that I think will add $100,000 of value, but it doesn't bloom until April, I might agree with them, right? I mean, my grandparents' house, I would sell during the summer. It has 7 water features and a half acre of 50 trees, right? For me, I do think the house would sell better during the summer, right? But the person who lives in downtown Salt Lake City in a condo, nothing changes, right? And I think that the people, you can show them, I mean, there's stats on list to sold price during the winter, during Q1, during Q3, right? So like, I mean, get familiar with those as well. But typically I find anybody that brings up one of those weird concerns, it's just kind of really not a concern at all, and it's more of an excuse for something else.
So I've got like the grandma,
Okay,
is getting old.
okay,
Grandma, there's thoughts of grandma going to California,
okay,
but daughter in California isn't ready for grandma and thinks she needs till 6 months to clean out grandma's house. But grandma really should be going to California.
I mean,
Would you talk of the
There's a
market?
lot going on there.
Yeah,
yeah, that's,
Yeah.
and see, and this is what I mean though, I feel like sellers are a lot more of an emotional process.
it is emotional.
I've advised people not to sell their houses.
In an emotional crisis, you mean?
Yeah, I've had people that have come to me and they're like, I need to sell my house next week, great, let's have an appointment. And during that appointment, I'm like, you need to stay where you are. It's not always beneficial to sell, right? And if there's a chance that.
Or it
grandma-
isn't the right time.
Yeah, if there's 100% chance that grandma moves to California and her sister's gonna hate her and send her right back. Okay, well, then it may not be best to sell that house until you've been there for 6 months and know that it's gonna be a good choice. Maybe
Yeah,
you should
that's-
rent out the house for now, right? So, I mean, you really, and that's kind of the other thing is I hear a lot of people that are like, how do we get them to sell their house? We don't get people to do it, right? We advise them on what we believe might be the best route, we show them the stats, we show them what their houses work, whatever that is. But then really, I mean, you protect your client, sometimes protecting your client is not selling their house or not helping them buy it, right? So yeah, in the follow-up too, like, I mean, this is gonna be my smart plans, like, have them a little bit geared towards. I mean, I would have one for, okay, if I get one from door knocking, this is the smart plan they go on. If I get them from an agent referral, this is the smart plan they go on. If they're SOI, okay, because sometimes that conversation is a little different, sometimes, you know, SOI, if I get an SOI referral, I don't usually have an email address, right? Typically, you know, Cassie doesn't know her brother's email address, so she just sends me his phone number, okay? So my smart plan for an SOI referral is usually more phone and text oriented than it is email. Agent referral, usually they'll have all that info, okay? So any questions about following up with leads from here before the appointment?
Can you, can show us at some point what smart plans you would choose for follow-ups?
Yeah, I can do that after.
Okay,
It would take up a lot of class, but I'll show you it. Guys, like smart plans, like how many of you guys have browsed that library?
and browse.
Okay, there's a lot. You gotta get a little specific in your search, but don't reinvent the wheel. Like somebody else has already done it for you. So most of my smart plans, if I have ever created one, it's more for the time side of it, but it's already the steps I still for somebody else. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about scheduling the appointment. Okay, buyer appointments. Where do we do buyer appointments?
In the office.
Okay, where do we do listing appointments?
Their house.
Okay, location, their house, 90% of the time. And I say 90 because 10% of real estate's owned by, it's probably rentals. Okay, rentals I don't do there. I do at the owner's house, okay? Okay, do's and don'ts. Do not talk about commission over the phone, okay? Do not talk about price. Do not talk about agency. And the reason I say don't talk about agency is I see a lot of people that try to like do this whole like, oh, I'll send you over the ERS right now and you can sign it. No, do not ever do that, okay? These are the 3 things that you don't talk about, okay? Any questions as to why? We all understand why. Right?
Like objections, why? Go over that real quick.
Over why we don't talk about these over the phone? Mr. or Mrs. Seller, I think you would sell your house for $350K. Cool, we want a 365, click. Right? Oh, we said they'll do it for 1%. Well, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, I only charge 6, click, right? Like, there's no way to have that conversation.
What would you say if they're like, well, how much do you charge?
That's something that we'll discuss
That's
when we
something,
get together.
that's something that we'll discuss when we get together. You know, and if they're like, well, homie will do it for 1%. You know, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, I can appreciate that somebody's willing to do it for less. I'd like to go over kind of what my value is and how I'll pay for myself. Right? Homie didn't say that they'll pay for themselves, they can. It's on recording. But in your listing presentation, you have a stat that shows that you paid for yourself, right? Do we not? You should.
I need to
The
figure
office
this
gave you one, right?
out.
So, and then the biggest one is just like agency, like I don't like when people start having a conversation, and I don't do it with buyers either. I just don't really have that conversation, because you can't expect people to sign paperwork, and you shouldn't have people sign paperwork if you have not gone through it with that paragraph by paragraph, okay? Dues, make sure both decision makers will be there. Okay, when selling a house, who has to sign the paperwork?
Both of them.
Whoever's on title.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say, hey, will both the decision makers be there during the appointment? Okay, if not, maybe try to,
Change the appointment, make an appointment when they
yeah,
can't
what
be.
does that word though?
Reschedule.
Reschedule. It's like, what the heck? What else do we need to do before the appointment? Like, while scheduling the appointment, what conversation do we need to have?
Well, they're selling, they're not qualifying.
Yeah, so pre-qualify the seller, right? So while I'm scheduling the appointment, if you haven't already had the conversation, there's a little script book in Ignite that shows you pre-qualifying sellers. Make sure that you have that checklist, okay?
What's the sorry, I'm sure I've read it probably a few times, but the
It just goes over.
is like,
it goes
are you
over-
ready to sell?
Yeah, where are you guys going? What has you selling? Blah, blah, blah. Because you have to have all of that information to have a good listing. Okay? So you just need to always, you need to know what questions are on that pre-qualifying checklist. And then make sure that before you have the appointment, you've gone through that. If you haven't, while you're scheduling the appointment, make sure that you get all of that information. Or at least as much as you can. Okay? And then,
If they're selling to buy, do you also have them fill out the buyer pre-qual too?
yeah, and we'll go through that.
Okay. CMAs,
Yeah, so, and that's more just, we'll talk about.
That's when you get there. This
we'll
is
talk about
phone
price.
call still.
Yeah, during the phone call, schedule the appointment. We're not talking about price, commission, or agency. We are talking about making sure that both of them are there, and we're making sure that we have qualifying checklists around. Cool?
Yeah, what about, if there's any title issues, would you ask that?
You won't know,
Until the-
and I wait till the appointment. Because usually those are pretty easy to clear too, if there is a problem, and usually the seller doesn't know if there's a problem. I don't. Usually they're like, oh, I didn't know that was there. And then the other thing I would just say is just make sure that, you send out like a text 24 hours before, hey, are we so good to meet tomorrow at 6? And then maybe even same day, because sometimes, I don't know, I mean, I've had sellers that I've never had to reschedule an appointment, and I've had sellers that I had to reschedule the appointment 3 times. So, I mean, whatever. But just follow up with them, and make sure that they're planning on calling, you're not knocking on the door and be like, we're not ready, so. Okay. This is your to-do list. Before the appointment. We're gonna run a CMA. We're going to get our seller packet together. And okay. Why do I have practice on there?
So that you go through everything beforehand, because when you get there, sometimes it's get a little overwhelmed with all the stuff that you've got covered.
Okay, if you have not practiced your listing presentation before you go, come on, you know what I mean? And I'm not gonna say that you can't take a listing. We know that most agents only interview one, or most clients only interview one agent, right? We know that 75% of them only interview one, 90% signed with the first one that came in. I'm not gonna tell you that not practicing your seller presentation is gonna make you lose a listing, because it's statistically not. I will tell you that it's gonna make for a lot tougher transaction. There's gonna be a lot of miscommunication, there's gonna be a lot of problems if you have not practiced this and know what to say. Okay?
It's gonna give you confidence, right?
Yeah. Well, okay, and then the other thing I wanna talk about is CMA. How many of you have ran a CMA? How many of you know that number is not 100% correct? Okay. Guys, when I run a CMA, I actually don't, but I don't know if I want this recorded because I'm gonna get criticized. I don't look at the specific number, and I don't actually run anything through a CMA generator. All I do is pull comps, okay? I pull my active, backup, under contract, and sold, okay? So my CMA looks like this. Active. Backup. Under contract and sold in the last 90 days. Quarter mile back.
I have a question about that, Phoenix.
Yep.
Do you pull the specific type of home?
Here's why I don't, okay? And it's more for a pricing perspective, so you wanna understand where the appraisal would come in, and you wanna understand where you can price.
Mhm.
Market value and appraised value in this market are two very different things, right?
Right.
If I have a townhome at 1,300 square feet and a single family home at 1,300 square feet, the appraisal will come in different. And there will be a few more buyers for the single family home than there are the townhome. But I do think that if the townhome is 240,000 and you're trying to list a single family at 320, I think that there's buyers that will take an $80,000 difference to go buy a townhome, right? I'm willing to sacrifice $80,000 to go live in the same square footage townhome, not have to do any of my yard maintenance, not have to do any of this, than 320 for the single family.
But how is that helping in your CMA?
That's helping me know where I can price that. That's helping me know the competition.
But what does that, I guess, in the comparison of those two, how would you price a townhome then?
Well, I mean, I'm still gonna look at the single family, right? Like the single family is gonna be my big draw.
So
But you
would your,
Do a CMA down based on the townhome.
No, I'm not gonna compare them.
that's what I'm asking.
No, like if you're running them through the adjusted values thing or whatever that spits you out a specific number, I'm not looking, I mean, yes, I'm gonna be specific in single family versus townhome, they're appraised differently,
Right,
right? They're valued differently,
right,
but I see a lot of people they'll cut out the square footage in the beginning. Mine's 3,000, so they go 2,500 low, 3,500 high. Fine, but you may still have competition that's under 2,500 square feet that you're not seeing because you just cut that out, right? And in this market, I mean, usually when I pull this on a CMA, I'm only getting 10 or 12 results
right.
most of the time, right? Unless it's some apartment condo complex that's had a bunch of stuff. But, and then I work backwards. I see a lot of people start getting super specific and then work backwards. I don't like that because I need a full picture. This gives you the full picture, then narrow down, right?
So when you're bringing your stuff to your client, your potential listing client, are you bringing things that they can see will compare to their
Yeah.
home, so they know what they should be priced at?
I pull 5 or 6 comps and
Uh-huh,
I print out the MLS sheet. I may even print out their old MLS sheet.
mhm,
And then I lay these out.
mhm.
And I've already highlighted the differences. Usually I can get pretty close. Like usually I'm gonna get within the same year range. Usually I'm gonna get within the same square footage. Usually I'm gonna get, but you always have the ones that it's like, you'll be in a weird area that has some gentrification and you'll have homes that were torn down and rebuilt, right? I don't think you should not include those in your CMA just because it's 20 years newer instead of 10, right? You guys see what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
a lot of people get way too
Too
specific for
specific,
me.
I see, yeah.
And if you get too specific, I think you're missing out on competition. I think you're not getting a full picture. So I always start big and then narrow it, and then I bring 5 or 6 comps to show.
That are gonna be very
They're going to be
similar
very
to
similar.
theirs.
And then I say, you know, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, given these comps, where would you price your home? Right? Because guys, I'll say it again, you do not have to tell people the value of their home. Most people know the value of their home thanks to the internet.
So I have I've got the major objective seller kind of person
Okay.
about pricing. So I lay out the 4 or 5 comps,
Okay.
maybe 6 comps out there, show them the prices where it is. And he says, I want to price mine basically $80,000 to $100,000 more than these houses are. And I say, well, I don't think that's or maybe not like that, but something to the effect of, well, this is where I would price your home compared to where these are. Well, why do you think? And he's like, well, my home's much better. My home's so much better. And I'm like, well, it's not.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you can't really argue with them, but
Well,
at
like I
that
said,
point,
it's always a topping line, right? If somebody, I mean, I went on a list of
What makes
presentation.
it better?
he paid, like this dude, okay, he's the forever guy. he paid like $60,000 to redo his basement. That's what he thinks his big thing is. He has an old original kitchen, you
He
know.
did it 30 years ago, right?
No, he did it like within the last 3 years or
But
something,
the upstairs.
but the upstairs is all, you know, so the main living space is just like, anyway, I'm sorry.
No, and so, I mean, I went on a listing presentation last year to a place up in Aramo, Idaho, way in Timbuktu. Hard part about doing places that are rural is you don't have a lot of homes, okay?
Right,
So I go, I'm talking to these people, I'm walking through their house, I was there for 3 hours, the 27-acre equestrian kind of center property, okay? They bought it in 2018,
so just a few years back.
maybe 2017,
Uh-huh.
for 350,000. What do you think they wanted to sell it for?
$1 million?
A million.
Over $1
too?
million?
$1.2 million,
Wow.
okay?
And
There-
what did you think it was worth?
I actually probably would have taken the listing if they wanted to be at 850. Now, let me tell you something. And here's why I say never talk about price over the phone. I was going to go, this was an agent referral, okay? And the agent had actually been there, bought a fireplace from these people and was like, wow, this property is amazing. Have you ever thought about selling it? They're like, yeah, we don't really know what it would be worth, you know, I mean, we could get 800 out of it.
And the agent
And then
said
she
something.
said, oh, no, this would be worth 1.2 million at least. Really? And because she said that, she didn't get a listing, and neither did I.
Uh-huh.
Because had she said, oh yeah, let's sit down and go over comps and see if that 800,000 is doable, we would have taken a listing because 800,000 is doable,
Right,
right? 2017, house prices have nearly doubled, they've done some improvements, 800,000, I totally could have sold that thing. But because she said 1.2, during my listing presentation with him, he literally said, oh yeah, Rebecca said 1.2, and at first I thought she was crazy, but the more I look into it, I really think it is. Like, great, right? Perfect example of why we don't talk about price over the phone, okay? But yeah, when I have a seller that's just crazy, and it's just like, you know, guys, listings take money.
Right.
They're money intensive. Buyers, you just pay for gas, you know what I mean?
right.
Listings, you're paying for photos, you're paying for marketing, you're paying for a sign, you're paying for all this stuff. Don't take listings that won't sell. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, Mr. Seller, you know, if you believe that you can sell your house for $1 million, good luck to you. If I find a buyer who's willing to spend that much money, and the problem too
Did they
is,
sell it yet? Have they
I don't
sold it
know.
yet?
yeah, I think, they signed paperwork that they called. I was willing to take it and just. I also use listings as marketing, right? So I don't really care if I take a listing and then it doesn't necessarily
But your
sell.
reputation does go on.
Yeah,
price.
I mean, it does, and that's where it was way out in Idaho and kind of in Timbuktu. I wasn't super worried about it. I wouldn't have done that with a listing in Salt Lake City or, you know, Ogden. But, you know, I was willing to take the listing for the marketing side of it and call other listings. And, you know, it's hard to tell in a case
Tracy,
where,
what are you doing? Yeah.
in a case where he wants to be 100,000 above though, you can't tell somebody that their house wouldn't sell for that.
Right, no, and I've taken him since that time on another, like, we previewed a home that was pretty comparable to theirs.
Okay.
And so I think he's a little bit more in a realistic zone now. I know his hangups, I'm meeting with him again today.
Okay.
I know his hangup is, the commission rate. But he's wanting to buy and sell, and depending on where he is, I think I'm a bit negotiable with those things, because if he's going to sign both agreements.
You don't have a listing agreement signed with them or anything?
No,
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 that's a lot of time, and effort.
Yeah.
So
well,
here's,
it's not, it's just kind of text
So,
messaging.
but
But it's.
what I was gonna say is I tell people that I can't promise them that their house will sell for that. In this market where you have people coming in and buying houses with cash, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I can't promise you that your house wouldn't sell for $100,000 over value. What I do know is that if you sit on the market for more than 2 weeks, you probably are gonna get less than you really have, right?
You're,
What do you mean by that? Then you go into the whole, like, you know, first 2 weeks is the time to
Let me give you.
expose
an example.
ourselves to the market. Let me give you an example. You know, neighbor of mine tried to sell their house earlier this year, way over listed it, and it ended up selling for way less than I thought market right? Happens all the time, okay? So, I mean, and I'll tell you a little bit about how I do my presentation, so I never have a problem with that.
Okay,
So, okay, your to-do list, guys, 5 or 6 similar comps, and then I get the bigger picture and then work down, because everybody understands why. Again, most agents probably don't do that, that's just how I prefer to do it. Okay, seller packet, so aside, you have a presentation. Okay, and then you have a packet. Okay, packet is full of all sorts of little just marketing materials, a moving checklist. This is what your open house flyer will look like. This is some moving companies that we use, Junk King, flooring, whatever, right? And then usually, not so much right now because buyers are paying for their own, but I would include a home warranty thing to just say, hey, this is probably what you'll be paying for the buyer. And yeah, so then I help them understand because it's on the rep sheet, the seller will pay for a home warranty. I help them understand what that home warranty is. Remember, you probably have the seller pay for yours when you moved in here. This is a refreshment on what it is it's gonna do. Okay. Any questions about what I put in the marketing material?
I see
Why?
yours.
Yeah, and I'm gonna show you, and I'll let you guys see this too. Okay, out of my listing presentation, or listing appointment, I should say, this presentation only takes maybe 15 minutes of the hour, maybe 10. I do not spend any time on this. Okay, so you guys can look at this and then pass it back, and I'll kind of go over what it is that I do before that. Okay, so how many of you, did any of you guys take Lee's listing class, listing clinic?
I took a couple of them.
Okay. So,
She's awesome, buddy.
yes,
Phoenix is too, but
Stern?
she's super decent. Uh-huh.
so, first one, so there's 5 steps in the listing appointment. You remember what they are? I think the first one is,
Oh, when you're there, oh, Jiminy.
it's
I'm sure I have a note.
goals and expectations. Two is the house walkthrough. Three is the actual presentation.
Okay.
4 is the CMA. And 5 is the paperwork. Okay. Which one do you think I think is the most important?
Paperwork.
I'd say probably
No.
one, so you know where they're coming from.
Walk through the house, goals and
Right?
Yeah.
I see a lot, guys, like, I feel like a lot of new agents skip over this so much. Okay, I remember my first 2 transactions, it was a buy sell, same client, okay? Every time I called Coach Dave with a question and he asked me a question. Why are they moving? What is their kid's favorite food? What is any question he asked me, I knew the answer. Okay, I knew everything about this client before I ever listed their house. Partly, it was SOI. But second off, because when I was talking to them over the course of 3 months about selling their home, I learned a lot about them. I learned a lot about their financials. I learned a lot about their fear of moving into a bigger house. Like, you guys, this client, okay, I sold their 900 square foot home, and then I helped them buy a house that had a 900 square foot living room. Okay,
Wow.
they went from 900 square feet, 3 bedroom, 1 bath, 4 kids, or 3 kids in them, to a 7 bedroom, 3 bathroom, nearly 4,000 square foot home. Okay, there's a lot of emotion in that.
Yeah.
Guys, I swear, I was playing therapist with her the entire transaction, and it came down to the fact that she felt like she did not deserve a 4,000 square foot home. It had nothing to do with the fact that they couldn't afford it. It had nothing to do with the fact that they were scared about moving. It had everything to do with the fact that she personally felt like growing up in poverty, that she did not deserve a 4,000 square foot home, and neither did her kids. Right? And then we work through that, and it's like literally therapist sessions, I mean, it's like counseling, okay? But working through that, build that expectation and that goal that, hey, this is an achievable goal for you, right? And so it's not always how much do you want from the house, it's not always what's the square footage or square footage of the bedrooms and the
It's that conversation.
it's the, why are you moving? Tell me more about what that would do for you. You have 3 kids that are crammed in this house. What would having 3,500 square foot do for you and your kids? Right? What would pulling the equity out of this house that I'm selling for double what you bought it do for you? Right? That's the conversation you got to have. And I see a lot of agents just skip right over it.
How did you convince her? How did you work with that? Because that's kind of what I'm going with grandma.
Right.
Because the grandma and the daughter are not on the same page. So,
I talked
how do you
more
talk to her
through,
about
and again, SOI, I know more about them, I feel like I can have a little more of that deeper conversation, but the conversation was, talk to me about the stress of everyday life,
okay,
right? Talk to me about the fact that finally it's, my kids don't have enough space for their toys, I am always cleaning up a house that I don't like, right? I hate my house, it's too small, we don't fit here. Right, and once I got through that stress, I'm like, don't you feel like you deserve to alleviate that stress? Don't you feel like you deserve for you and your kids to have a place that they can call home? If you don't like this house, you'll never call it home, right? And, you know, I mean, I felt terrible because 3 months in, I went to their house and she hated it.
Seriously?
She hated the house I sold.
the 4,000 square foot one.
Yes.
Yeah,
She hated it.
because she still wasn't comfortable, like she's still.
Yeah, and she's like, I almost wish I never sold, like, blah, blah, like, oh my God, like. We had all this conversation, I thought this was the best for her, and now she made her house, like, I'm the worst agent ever. And then it was, you know, I kind of had this like, okay, we'll give it a few months, wait until you.
It is
move in.
that, it's that
And-
transition.
And now it's like 90 day, oh my gosh, you changed our lives, thank you, right? But like, you gotta understand that like those emotions are happening too while you're going through it, right? So anyways, that's what I mean by goals and expectations too, is I mean, hardly ever through goals and expectations am I talking about how much they're getting for their house, what their next house is gonna look like, and we're not having that conversation here. Here, we're having a conversation of, have you ever sold a home before? How was your experience? How do you feel right now? What are your motivations? What are your stressors? Okay? But through this conversation, tell me what stressors a seller's gonna have.
Not having a place to live right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Do you offer help with that sort of stuff, Phoenix?
Like helping them move?
No, or like if they need a transition place in between their permanent place or something
I
like
would say if plan A can't work, I'll help them find out plan B,
that? Okay.
right? I mean, yes, I do help them, but I don't really advertise that. What else?
Sorry, what was the question now?
Somebody's lived in their house for 30 years and they're getting ready to move. What should I be concerned about?
what about all the stuff that they have like, you know, maybe they might be orders.
Okay,
They need to downsize their stuff.
I went through that because my sellers, they wanted to downsize, but then she couldn't very get rid of her like stuff.
Right.
When it came time to it, she couldn't do it, so
okay,
they upsized.
right? What else?
This is what it is.
Any, yeah, anything, paint.
Okay. Let me explain the last one. I have a seller right now down in Enterprise, Utah, who had a kidney transplant, is 80 years old, and trying to sell her house and move up here. I have a literal legitimate concern that she may die during the process of selling her house. I literally talked to broker Dave about what if we get through everything and on her way from Enterprise to Salt Lake City, she dies, then what happens? Right? Literally, okay? I have another client who's 75 years old who wants to sell his property, downsize, and yeah, 30 years, there's sentimentality to everything, right? Is that how you say that?
Yeah.
Sentimentality. I'm not gonna say that that's how you spell it, but it was a shot. Okay, this one's a big one. Okay, especially, I mean, And there's a lot of signals in that. If somebody's lived in their house for 3 years and they wanna sell it, am I worried about this? Not as much as the client who's lived there for 35, right?
Right.
And it's important to help make sure that you guys understand that, like, I'll list a house all day long with a seller who I feel like, you know, like this lady right here, help the client, like, we're a little nervous, let's list it, keep our options open, see if we get an offer, okay? Before I have her accept that offer, she fully understands that the Rep C is buyer protected. She fully understands that if she signs that contract, she's selling her house, right? Okay, I mean, we've had situations where client gets diagnosed with cancer, no longer wants to sell his house. Buyer's like, sorry, you signed a client, or you signed a contract, and he doesn't really have an out except pay the $10,000 in earnest money back to the buyer,
Right.
right? And those situations happen. And so when you're taking listings, you really, and that's why I say, like, one, make sure your client's ready to sell. Make sure that your client is in the right mindset, in the right, yes, we're ready to do this, this is where we're going. If they have any of these concerns, you need to address these before you put them under contract. Nothing's worse than getting a call the day before closing, we don't wanna sell. Okay, well, see you tomorrow at 9 AM because you have to, right? So this is a big piece of taking listings. And the other thing I'll say is, most agents that are coming in, if you are competing against another agent, they're not going over this. No agent's ever gonna be like, hey Tracy, I realize that, you know, you kind of have a lot of stuff and you're telling me you want to downsize. Do you feel like you're really ready to let go of a lot of this stuff? Why would an agent ever say that to Tracy? That's the reason for Tracy to go, oh wait, maybe I don't want to sell, right? But from the agent perspective, I'd rather work with Tracy knowing that she's ready to downsize than work with her and before telling me she doesn't want to sell, right? So that's why I think this is so important, and I do think that this will give you an upper hand when it comes to competing against agents, is agents don't like having these uncomfortable conversations.
Dive deep.
Yeah, okay? Any questions about goals and expectations? This is also where I set up how I talk to the client, like I said, I have some expectations of
No, I'm good.
how we'll communicate and all that stuff, okay? And then part of that goal setting is, okay, where are we going? What do you want to buy? Blah, blah, blah. That's a very minuscule part of the conversation, okay? House walkthrough.
Do you go with them?
I like them to come with me, yes. Some agents don't.
Right.
But I want them, okay, a lot of my house walkthrough usually has more to do with staging than anything, okay? Won't say who, I think there was an agent in this office who listed a house for $850,000. In my mind, there was no reason they didn't sell for $850,000. As I was walking through the open house, I'm walking through and I'm like, why is this thing not selling? And it's driving me crazy, right? So I'm walking through the house, I'm looking around, and I'm like, you know, there's this wow factor all the way through the house, and then you walk into the master bedroom and there's nothing. There's 2 twin mattresses on a box spring, an armoire with guns in the case, and then you have a dresser. Okay, they're losing the wow factor, right? And they're like, I don't know why this house is sitting on the market. And I said, every single part of the house is great, except for the part that you need to sell. Your buyer for this listing is a 60-year-old retired couple. Most likely. I mean, half of the people that walk through the open house are retired, ready to downsize, quote unquote. And you're losing them at the bedroom that they live in. Had they staged that, I guarantee you it would have sold pretty good. Right? And so I'm having that conversation while I do the house walkthrough. My very first listing, it's a 3-bedroom home. My most likely buyer is a young family starting out, probably 4 people. The house did not look like it fit 4 people. It looked cramped. So that house walkthrough was all about painting and then staging the house to look like it fits 4 people. That was all I did, okay? House sold in 4 days in the middle of Timbuktu, where the average days on market is 195, okay? So that's why the house walkthrough is important. I talk through staging more than anything, but I will talk about repairs, okay? If there's stuff, during the goals and expectations, I say, how honest do you want me to be? And they're like, I want you to be 100% honest. Okay, cool. That gives me free rein to kind of be rude about some of the things in their house where I'm like, I don't know who did that, but that needs to be fixed. Oh, that was me. Okay, it needs to be fixed. You know what I mean? But most of the time, my house walkthroughs, I don't really list anything that's like garbage. Like, I'm just one of those people that I don't really love. Like, I mean, I've sold a lot of garbage, but I don't necessarily love to list it.
Doesn't Lee say something like no animals on the wall and what else? She has
Yeah,
a couple
so
of-
no animals, no God.
No, yeah, no religious,
Family,
and no, yeah.
right? So I have them like declutter all of that stuff. You know, and I mean, it's, the house walkthrough is a lot of, okay, this is what we're gonna declutter, this is what needs to be cleaned up, staging, and then minor repairs. You really need to be keen on what it is that your client needs to do. Do not advise them to put $15,000 into hardwood floors
Right.
when it's only gonna net them $5,000, right? I wanna show you guys the listing that I just put under contract. Okay. So this is the carpet. Okay, like absolute trash house, okay?
He's just on.
But that also goes to like working with people like that wanna work with you, because if they know you're like really honest,
See,
Yeah.
it's not gonna like. Oh yeah.
okay, all the carpet looks like this. Oh, all the way through the house. Oh, wow. Pretty much 2,000 square feet.
Oh, it was the Hari house that I didn't know.
Okay.
It's so bad.
Luckily, client doesn't live there, okay, it's a rental. But that house walkthrough said, hey, client, you have a problem. I'm not getting photos done on this property, and I'm not listing it if it looks like this. Okay? So I had a buyer appointment or a buyer walk through it with their agent. I met them there and I walked through the house and I said, you know, here's kind of what we're thinking. Market value is probably 260. My client's willing to give you a concession. You know, and we can discuss kind of what that concession looks like. So my client doesn't have to really fix anything, or can get it under contract, okay? Because now it's vacant, and from an investor standpoint, vacancy is losing, right? Okay, so that house walkthrough, I talked with my client, I said, hey, it's gonna take you 3 or 4 weeks to get it on the market, we're gonna have 2 weeks in showings, and then we're gonna get it under contract. I think we would go under contract at 255 or 260. Okay? Buyer walked through, wrote us an offer at 255. My client doesn't have to replace the carpet, they don't even have to clean it, all they're doing is paying $5,000 in closing costs. I said, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, would you like to sell it basically to this guy off
As is.
market? As is, you don't have to lift a finger for $5,000. What do you think they said?
Yes.
100%, right? I'm not gonna advise them to go dump 8 or 9 grand into a listing for the chance to not really get any more than we just got, right? And I think that's why it's also important to make sure that you really understand the market and understand what's gonna bring value, okay? Any questions about the house walkthrough or how to have tough conversations? Anybody had tough conversations? Okay, I mean, I've had some that I didn't love. But again,
But if you know their goals and expectations, that's how you get through the.
exactly, that's how it goes, okay? Presentation, you guys all flip through it, it's pretty self-explanatory, I leave this with them. A lot of that presentation looks like this. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, thank you for your trust, I'm so excited to work with you. With my cute little picture right here. This is just a little bit about why I joined KW Salt Lake City. My favorite belief is the win-win or no deal. The reason is when we're negotiating with a buyer, they're buying a house, you're selling a house, we want everybody to win. These are some stats as to why it is that I chose Keller Williams Salt Lake City and how we're gonna sell your house for more money in less time. If you have any questions about that, let me know. I scroll through and I say, these are your complimentary services that I charge, that I do not charge you. And then how to sell your home quickly and then I say marketing strategy. Let me know if you have any questions about this. I point out 2 or 3 important things, like the just listed, and then open house, listing management. Then I say this is how buyers found their house in 2020. And then I say this is what your open house will look like. This is why it's important to price your home correctly. Keep in mind, I'm not talking about pricing during this. I'm only setting the expectation that we'll be setting the price correctly in order to sell their house, okay? I do not talk about pricing during this part. Then I say, this is just your quick little home selling process guide. Let me know if you have any questions about any of these steps. Relax, you hired me, real estate's complex. You know, you'll never see hidden fees, you'll never see team fees, blah, blah, blah. And then this is just a little guide about different stipulations that different loan programs have. Thank you. Here's my contact. Okay, that is pretty much what it looks like. It literally takes me 10 minutes to go through. And I always say, please feel free to review this later. Let me know if you have any questions. At this point, they're signing paperwork before I ever even open this, really. I know probably 5 minutes into the presentation whether or not we're gonna work together. And that's all about goals and expectations. I walked through their house. I've already done enough tie downs. I don't really need to spend 30 minutes going through this. I'll let them review later after they sign it. Okay. And then I just walk through the CMA again. You know, you tell me highest price. You told me that getting the most amount of money is your biggest goal or your biggest motivation or whatever. Let me talk to you about, you know, some of the recently sold comps, what that looks like, what the updates that they have, right? Like you need to know those comps, and then help them decide what it is that they're gonna fix and what it is that they're not gonna fix, right? And then what it is that you're gonna list at. Okay, I always let them pretty much name their price. I don't ever want to tell them the price. Anybody know why? Why should you never tell somebody the price of their home? Why?
Because they're gonna then hold you accountable for that.
Yep. If the house sits on the market, 365,000, and you told them 365, whose fault is it? If they said 365, and you said, okay, we can start there, and it sat on the market for 2 weeks, whose fault is it? Okay, cool. Okay, that is the most important, is that you let them name their price, okay? Guys, by the end of the presentation, they're pretty much asking me what they need to do next, okay? Most of the time, I've provided enough value and I've built enough of a relationship, especially when I pull this out, it looks very, part of the reason that I have this is just because if you're talking about marketing and how much money you're gonna spend in marketing, and you pull out this little like copy paper magazine, little brochure thing, it looks chintzy to me, okay? If I say, I'm spending hundreds of dollars on marketing and I pull this out, well, this little piece of thing cost me like $20, so you better believe that I'm spending enough money on marketing, right? It looks good, it looks pretty, okay? To me, this is kind of where that solidification of this is what they're going to do for me happens. I think they see, like, I mean, I've gotten a lot of different comments from every client I've ever taken a listing presentation on or done a buyer presentation with. All of them have always commented on how pretty this is and how much they love it. Okay, so I like something like this. I think you should do something like this. I don't recommend really going on a listing presentation and gloating about all of your marketing and then pulling out something that doesn't look good. Okay, because trust me, there are a lot of agents in this office that do. So, that's kind of my tidbit about that. Then, honestly, the paperwork honestly is mostly filled out already. And I say, you know, we agreed on price, and earlier I said the expectation that if we agree on price, we'll get forward and we'll work together, and they say yes. And so I said, you know, we agreed on price. It doesn't sound like you have any other concerns for me. Are you ready to get the ball rolling? They say yes. Perfect. Here's the agreement that we need to sign in order to move forward, and so I can start marketing your property, even in the office, if we're not taking pictures until, you know, whatever date we've already set. And then I just walk through and I'm like, this is the term of the agreement. This is the agent. You're hiring Keller Williams, Salt Lake City to sell your house. We charge 6%. Please initial there, they initial, and then I keep going forward. And I've never, ever had anybody even reach out. If you do your presentation perfect, because you practice it, they will never ask about the 6%, ever. I had one client that asked, will you do 5? And I said, nope. And he said, okay, any initial. Like, there was no conversation around it, and it was really just like, they'll ask just because they want to ask.
So what if you're doing a buyer and a seller at the same time? It doesn't matter.
No, because I really will probably spend $800 to $1,000 on a listing.
Right, no, for sure.
Especially with us, I mean, my signs, I just ordered 4 signs and they cost me $500.
Right,
So the sign in front of your yard is $100, the key box on your house is $100. I wanna send out just sold, my open house is gonna cost me at least $50, right? I mean, and especially if it's a $300,000 house, like, I mean, there's a really, and I think it's important to understand, it is very, very easy to be not profitable. And I think that a lot of agents are like, we make so much money on commissions. Your business expenses are insane.
Yeah.
I mean, between car, insurance, sure, my rent, I mean, my bills for real estate are close to $3,000 a month, you know what I mean? And it's like, as you build that business, you really start to understand that it's very, very easy to be not profitable.
yeah,
Right? So I really, like I said, I mean, somebody made a comment earlier about like gifting commissions or like, you know, talking about helping them out. Is more a conversation towards the end. I've kicked in my commission several times, or just $100 to cover this or $100 to cover that. I have no problem doing that, but I don't advertise it up front. I always under deliver or under promise over, right? So, yeah, the commission agreement conversation never really happens because they're so excited to work with me that I'm just like, I charge 6%. They're like, okay, and they just sign it. And I've never had anybody really question it. If they do, it's just like, you know, no, I don't lower my commission, and the reason is because I provide better service than any other agent you can hire. Oh, no, you're probably right. And then they just. So, I think a lot of people get super scared about commission conversation. But, you know, and usually though, by the time I've pre-qualified the seller and I have the appointment, I mean, I literally have a 100% conversion rate listing appointment signed paperwork. I don't always have 100% signed paperwork listing, but I always get the paperwork signed. And that is because if they choose to sell their house, they are working with me, right? I've had some clients that, you know, were kind of on the fence. We had a conversation. They're ready to work with me as long as they're ready to sell their house. They ended up not selling their house. Cool.
I like the thing that Lee says at the beginning. She says either 3 things are gonna happen in this. We're gonna agree to work together. You're gonna agree to work, you want me, or I'm gonna agree to want you, or we're not gonna agree. Something's, you know, and any of those 3 things are fine.
Right.
But, you know.
Yeah, and I don't think you have to have a 100% listing presentation to
Right.
paperwork. I mean, realistically, I hadn't gone on a listing that I didn't want. I have learned that there are a few clients that I did not want to work with.
Well, yeah,
And it just didn't really work out, but yeah, I mean, overall, and I guess that's more just like my presentation side of things. And I will say, like, sometimes I'm one of those people that I like to have the presentation earlier on. Some people like to wait until they're more motivated. If somebody's interested in selling their house, I'm right there. I want an appointment, I want to sign them, I want at least an ERS. So if over the next year and a half, you decide to sell, I'm your agent, right?
you sign a thing for a year and a half on a listing.
A lot of mine are a year and a half.
I was gonna ask is how long do you put your agents on board on there?
If they're ready to sell, I mean, I had an investor client that's selling 4 rentals. I didn't really need to hold it for a year and a half because they were selling as they came up, so I did it for like a year, or till the end of the year, I don't know. I had one that, you know, they were kind of on the fence. I'm like, hey, look, take your time. I'm gonna do this for a year and a half, just so you kind of have some time to decide. We can list this, sell, we don't have to do more paperwork later on. Oh yeah, cool, right? But there's something official about them signing the paperwork that then they stop talking about real estate to everybody else, but. And that's why I signed the agreements, because nothing would be worse than me having an appointment, telling them what their house is worth. They're excited to work with me saying, okay, let's reconvene in 6 months. I come back in 6 months and open door sold their house. You know what I mean?
How much time do you dedicate to people? I know you're talking about building a relationship, but like where somebody has something and then there's not anything signed, I would say, like, I really think
wasted.
of my time, and if I don't have an agreement, there's only so much I'll discuss.
Right.
So every single time in my year and a half, I have wasted more time with people that I signed agreements with than people that I didn't. Okay? Buyers that I showed 4 houses that I didn't have an agreement signed, they bought them. I had a client last year that I signed an agreement with and I showed them 120 homes and they never bought it. Right?
There's no like,
So for me, there isn't. For me, there is nothing. I mean, I had a seller that I just wasted like 5 months with, and they decided not to sell, and I signed that agreement a long time ago. In the same 5 months, I've been nurturing a lead that's never signed paperwork, you know, they'll list,
That's
right?
kind of me.
So
I'm nurturing a lead, so
I'm-
what goes into it, I guess, for you? Like, how far do you go into things with that person without them signing the agreement? Does that make sense?
as far as they're willing to go, I mean,
I've met with this guy once,
So
and
there comes-
everything else is just through text.
there comes a point though
It's
where
not.
I think there's a fine line between wasting time and nurturing a lead.
Right, that's.
You will know whether or not they're gonna buy or sell.
I've let from a listing appointment that I went on with Nina.
Yeah,
And it was someone that we were kind of doing together, and then she left the agency and she's like, keep following up with her. And I did for a bit, but then I realized, I mean, I knew she's not in a place to list. And I just said, I ended it with her, I kind of said, you know, if it comes to the point that you are ready to sell, by all means, give me a call. So I mean, you do,
You just kind of fill it
Yeah.
out.
yeah, you've gotta fill it out, but.
like this guy just got pre-qualified just
Yeah,
like yesterday, he was approved sort of thing. And so it's
he's
just,
taking steps.
yes,
You'll know when somebody's moving forward and when they become stagnant.
I have to go too.
So. That's my thing, is you'll know when somebody's done moving, you'll know when somebody's done making a decision, and just like follow it though, you know what I mean?